you so much, Riva, for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have your beautiful face and see you after such a long time virtually.
Thank you so much, Ginny, for having me. This is an absolute pleasure and an honor, if I may say so, to be here.
No, not at all. And I think we've had a brief meeting when we were visiting Dubai together for a forum. And it was really nice to connect and sort of have like-minded people in the platform and to sort of discuss ideas and where can we really take this industry forward and how we can collaborate.
Yeah.
So while I was thinking of this podcast, I thought of you because I thought you might have a lot to say in this from this photography fraternity. And I thought, what better time and opportunity to actually reach out and have a candid, heart-to-heart conversations with you.
I know, true. It's crazy times we live in. What can I say? But I guess this is the sort of new normal now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we're all just going to have to learn to adapt and live with this, right?
Absolutely. So Riva, you've had a very interesting journey, and I was reading about you. I mean, you're of course all in the tabloids also. I've seen you on Google, you're on Wikipedia, so you're like a star already. And there was absolutely no need to come to the wedding world and become another star. But you've also been in front of the lens for over a decade. You know, you are one of the first, I think the only ones I know of also, who's been in front of the lens and has chosen to go behind the lens and not do anything else and figure out a way. I mean, was that journey of yours a trigger point for you to do something, or you always had a passion for photography?
So, I'll be very honest. I think pretty much, ever since any of us have had like phones that have cameras, I'm old enough to have seen that transition from regular mobile phones that looked like weapons to, mobile phones that had decent cameras.
Yeah.
We all sort of used our phones and our cameras. And then at some point, I even bought a little point and shoot. Didn't know how to use it. I just put it on auto mode and I travel. So basically, I started traveling quite a bit, post 2008, 2009 depression.
Yeah.
During television, no time to travel. There's like crazy amount of work. The hours are crazy and all of that. There was not much time to travel. I'd take off on breaks, but they'd be quick breaks. So I ended up traveling quite a bit. And, I take out my little point and shoot and stuff like that. But then I got back to television for another 2 years and again went on sabbatical, again came back. So photography was sort of like an ongoing thing. And then finally I was like, I said, okay, I think I'm kind of done with TV now. And this is something that excites me. Let me give it a shot. Because I would do things like, I think the first time anyone really noticed my photography halfway it was at a friend's kid's first birthday. And she had twins and the dad was like playing around with the kids. And there was some decent light and I just took some candid shots literally on my Chota Sa point and shoot. And they came out pretty decently. And her dad was an artist. And he looked at it and he said, "You're pretty good. You have an eye for this." And I was like, "Uncle, I mean, you're just being polite. Thank you." But that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, but then I from time to time, I'd shoot friends. I'd shoot like travel pictures and stuff like that just for fun. And then everyone was like, you should give this a shot. So I said, okay. And, I'm like, what's the point of using this nice camera when you don't even know how to work it, right? Yeah. So I went, I went and I did a course in my basics and advanced. Loved it. I'd go out and go into the streets and shoot and just find any and every friend who I could possibly like find to shoot. And it was interesting because I really enjoyed it. So I ended up going to Paris for a summer program to specialize in portraiture. And
so I'll get to that. I want to know in detail on how did you get this professional learning about it, because I know a lot of people who do it out of passion and assume they're good in it and sort of learn with the years of experience that they put in, They don't usually go for a professional course to work on their skill a lot more before they get into it fully. So was this a conscious decision you made before you opt to go to enroll for a program and learn the skill a lot better in order to pursue it as a full-fledged career? Or was it something that you thought was always the path for you to sort of take?
So, Ginny, honestly, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. And I feel if you're going to do something, do it properly or then don't do it.
Yeah.
I've somehow always been artistically inclined. I mean, forget the fact that I've been an actor. I paint on porcelain. So I'm decent with drawing and things like that. I have an eye for creative things, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, if it just started off pretty much as a hobby, where I said, okay, let me just pursue this and see how it goes. And literally, I think after I did my basics and advanced, which was in Bombay itself, somebody like a friend, I think that's how, accidental professions kind of happen. A friend was looking for a photographer for like a small mehndi ceremony at home, like a pre-wedding thing, but it was, I think the pre-wedding functions were fairly like small. So in Bombay, we have like this, you have beautiful gardens in the building, and they sort of were doing an intimate thing. And she said, listen, we've not got a photographer for that. Why don't you just come? And that's literally how it started for me.
Wow.
So I just went, I took my camera, I was also a guest, and I just I think it helped that people knew me and that I'm a woman and all of that. So that helped, I took my camera along and took
What year
pictures,
was
and then
this?
someone found me.
What year was this?
This was 2016-ish. Yeah. So 2016. So she said, you should really do this professionally, because, and then, I think one job led to another, because people who were at that mehndi function, when they saw the pictures, and, I was just like, I wasn't doing much. So I literally, I think edited those pictures and gave them in a week or maybe less.
Yeah.
And they were, let's not get into like the timeline deliverables now, but how clients always like, okay, we give them their first look. Yeah, you give them the first look and then they're happy, right? So anyway, so I gave them the pictures in like less than a week, because, I wasn't like doing so much. I was still studying my advanced photography and things like that. So they were really thrilled with like, the outcome and this and that. So I think that's how work sort of slowly started. Then one couple from that was celebrating their 25th in Goa. It was a beautiful party, it was at Sulamer, it was a buyout of the property, and it was like the most amazing people, the most amazing photographs came out of that. Of course, like a lot of them were like, there was someone who's pretty famous, who's a stand-up comedian who's super famous, and he gave me like these, whoa, he's like pretty big, and he gave me all these pictures, like, starting in his swim shots and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. And then after that, I said, okay, if I really want to do this, and I think one thing I've always sort of not been able to do in my life was go abroad to study. So I started looking at programs essentially in India. Unfortunately, we don't cater to adult education. Every photography course I looked at was like a full year, 9 to 5. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do this like for one whole year, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So then I started looking, and then I said, okay, I've always had this thing, I wanted to go abroad to study, which I never did. So then I started looking, and somehow I did a little bit of like research, and this one place in Paris kept popping up with like, and I had photographer friends in the industry, obviously, because I'd been an actor and a model and everything.
Yes.
And this one name kept popping up, and I said, you know what, I love Paris anyway. Can it be any better like to go and do a summer program in Paris? It can't. So yeah, that's pretty much how that happened.
Fabulous. So, when you did you came back with your degree, and you came back with learning the nuances of photography, and was the idea to venture into wedding photography full-fledgedly, or were you okay with getting into like say studio? Because you've been a model and actor yourself. You of course see a lot of opportunity in weddings as well. So was there any early influences in the wedding world that allowed you to venture into the wedding world full-fledgedly?
So like I said, I think it just sort of happened by default, because the first proper gig I did happened to be a pre-wedding function. So sometimes I think these things are just destiny. And then the paid assignments I ended up getting after that, of course, I shot like a few people in their homes and things like that, because it was the easiest thing. Like I was just starting off, they'd give me like some token money, or say, oh, we'll buy you this or that or whatever. And I was also just like exploring my options, right? So yeah, and I think what I ended up liking a lot about weddings or parties per se was there was a lot of candid stuff.
Yes.
And like I told you, because I basically, in Paris, I also studied photojournalism, which basically means documenting something, in a very journalistic approach. And literally at a wedding, of course, you do your posed bridal shots, you do your posed couple shots, you do your posed family portraits and stuff like that. But a huge part of it is also just getting those, I know it's a slightly overused, abused word, but the candid moments. So that's what photojournalism is all about, and I love that
That
at
was
a
also
wedding.
your style. I mean, I was going through your entire portfolio. Like, I was trying to do my little research as well, and I saw you. I mean, you rightly said. I mean, candid style seems to be your particular style since you've done photojournalism in that.
Yeah, yeah.
But how would you describe your style if I was to ask you in like one sentence or one word? What would be Studio Riva Bubber's photography style?
So, like you said, it's definitely more candid. And in that space, I try and get creative sometimes. And I think that only comes with like experience and experimenting and sometimes playing around. Sometimes you do something and you're not quite sure, and you take your safety shots, of course, because you can't have an unhappy client. And sometimes you just do something, and sometimes literally you maro a tukka and it works.
Yeah, but I've seen you manage to get that tukka quite often. I think because I see the kind of pictures you've clicked. They are such amazing moments in terms of say a daughter just laughing, not crying on a dad's shoulder, which is very unlike a wedding photography that you'd expect. And then friends laughing with their the bride or the groom in a most candid way possible. So I mean, the moments you've captured are very different to the regular photography that I've seen. Of course, I come across a lot of them. I think you do have, and I think that uncle really got it well and way in advance, and all of us. Did you have an eye for those moments, and which are very rare to capture? And I think you do a brilliant job at it. It's absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's really sweet.
Yes, and I wanted to ask you. You talked about even camera photography in your initial years, but now you see the trend, like since the digital world is evolving and the way it is, and we've been pushed into this digital world unknowingly, knowingly, and we've been asked to sort of adopt this digital challenge way sooner than we thought we would. So where do you see, in terms of photography, do you see any digital impact happening, from the tools, techniques, or even the equipment point of view?
So I know I have heard of like some weddings being live streamed, and things like that. So I guess that is something we will have to look into as well. Also, to be honest, I have actually shot like the first Vogue mention that I was lucky enough to get was for Nadia Chauhan's wedding, which was so she's the MD of Parle Agro. She's from the Chauhan family. They own Parle biscuits and distillery and all of that, right? So hers was not during COVID, but it was just her second marriage, and it was a very beautiful, intimate wedding. Literally 30 people, just their core family. And it was amazing. It was stunning. I mean, we did the pictures and Vishal Punjabi shot the video. And I remember we had a blast because, come to think of it, Ginny, in a wedding, you really don't have more than 50 odd people that are important. It'll be the core gang of friends, it'll be the core family. The others are just acha bulana patta hai because, it's business, or it's a big deal in India when we have a wedding. So it's more of a social event than really abroad, they do intimate weddings all the time. Like, absolutely. When sometimes you interact with these international photographers and they're like, so what's the guest at your average wedding? And I'm like, average wedding, like on the lower side, 250. And they're like, you're joking, right? Because their regular weddings are like 50, 60, 100 people. When they do a big wedding, it's 250, I suppose. Yeah. From whatever I've seen, like from my other photographer friends,
so
like
online,
in the West.
Online streaming is great, but do you see will there be a change from the DSLR world 5 or 10 years from now to something else, or do you see the camera phones taking over? Because you're getting some really good cameras now where people are opting for photography from there. Do you see that change?
So, okay, it's gonna take a really kick-ass phone company to come up with a camera that can defeat like the mirrorless or DSLRs that we use, to be honest. Because, okay, so let me just tell everyone out there, because someone will say, oh my god, this phone camera is a 64 megapixel and it's a 108 megapixel. It's all hogwash. Okay, the size of your sensor on your camera is probably not more than, I should think, a centimeter by a centimeter, which is super tiny, right? It's like your fingernail. And so just imagine, it's like saying you just have that much space. How many ever megapixels you put in, they're just getting smaller and smaller. Your megapixels hold the detail. So even if I tell you that my camera is 48 megapixels, but the sensor size is that big, that's a lot more detail you're getting. I know it's a bit technical, But everyone knows this whole megapixel game, cameras come out with like 100 megapixel on the phone.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying the cameras are bad. Like, I have an iPhone. Most of my stories that I post are shot on the iPhone. I tell a lot of people that because you may not have your camera on you every single moment, but you have your phone on you every single moment, unfortunately, the world we live in. So, you can shoot some great stuff on your phone, but I honestly don't see a phone taking over a professional camera in a rush, because there's just so much you can do in camera, in a professional camera.
Yeah.
You can take a phone picture and you can make an average picture look good, but you can't, you can take a great picture on a camera, on a professional camera, and make it like marvelous,
Yes, that's actually.
I don't really know if you can do that on a phone, honestly.
I agree with to that completely, because I think one wouldn't like camera phones to be going around in your wedding when
Yeah.
with a nice
I mean, you wouldn't know who the professional photographer is from, sorry to say, any of your guests, right? You've seen umpteen videos, right? All these guests at the video. Hello. Everyone who has a phone thinks they're like the wedding photographer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree to that. And so, take me to understanding your goal when you shoot a wedding. What is your goal? And what drives you to shoot weddings? Like you said, you tend to be creative with the candid pictures. Since you're passionate about that, so what do you think? What are your goals when you you locked on a wedding and you want to go out there? What are your thought processes? I want to understand your creative journey. Like you go there. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so first and foremost, I tell my brides, especially because Guinea, you understand, as women, men are generally chilled out unless they're extremely reserved or very rarely stuck up or whatever. They don't really care. A wedding is all about a bride. I'm sure even at your wedding, no one cared what your husband was going to wear. Everyone asking you, what are you wearing? Who's doing your makeup?
Yes.
It's all about the bride. I tell my grooms, listen, I'm sorry, I love you, but you're incidental. It's all about the bride. So the first thing I do is tell the brides that, listen, you need to be 100% comfortable with me. Okay? Then my crew, because I'm going to be tailing you for those 2, 3, 4 days. Your mom, your sister, your best friend isn't going to be there. I'm going to be everywhere, literally tailing you. So I think that's the most important thing, that they just see you as their sort of shadow best friend or whatever during those few days. I try as far as possible to meet every single bride, or at least do like a video chat or something, if they don't live here or whatever. This is important. I think what happens is when you sort of become like their shadow or furniture around them, then they don't really notice you anymore. Yeah. And you can pretty much, you're left to do your thing. Then all the friends, and I'm telling you, I really think it helps that I'm a girl. Because, I've had some brides who, some brides you hit it off with instantly and they end up being like friends much after their wedding, and, they have babies and everything. But some brides then, you can see they're nervous, and especially on the big day before the Pheras, they'll be like, okay, any tips? And I'm like, yeah, okay, breathe, do this, do that, whatever. But yeah, I think the creative process, honestly, is, like I said, I take my safety shots because, you'll have one dadi or one mum or some chachi will say, "Arey beta, lekin uski shadi mein to aise photo liya tha, teri aise nahi li," You know what I'm talking about. So I do my safety shots, literally, you do the granny shot where, this is the portrait that the granny will want to put on her mantelpiece somewhere, or of, ye maybe like granddaughter ki shadi ki. And then I just sort of, like I said, I do a decent amount of street photography, because I think street photography happens to be like the best practice for wedding photography, because you have no control over who's doing what on the street, right? Unless you actually tell them, acha, aise karo, waise karo, which you don't want to do. The whole point is to be able to go out there and practice. So at a wedding, again, I don't know what someone's going to do. May have a bride, I've had brides who've laughed through their pheras. I've had a bride who's laughed through her bidai, and I'm actually telling her, because we became really good friends. We did the roka as well. I said, babe, what is this? You're giving me your laughing photos. And she started laughing even more. She's like, but I'm not feeling like crying. What do I do? And I was just like, oh, okay, so this is going to be fun. And literally in 5 minutes, when the time came to actually hug her parents, they wouldn't start sobbing. Yeah. So I don't know how to explain a creative process. Like I said, I think it's just important, to be comfortable with them, more so for them to be comfortable. I do this every day. I mean, I'll shoot a wedding, next day there'll be another bride. Yeah. Of course, I give it my all and it's their wedding, but at the end of the day, it's their big day. And we know there's enough and more drama as it is, on their big days. So I just try and make them as, I almost like pretend like it's my sister's wedding, and I'd do anything to make my sister comfortable, right? So I'd just like, I fluff her lehenga, I tell her to breathe, I say drink water, I say stuff like go pee before you wear your lehenga. I do all of those things, and I think they just like the fact that you're not just there, like it's not part of my job, to tell them these things.
Right.
But you just do it because there's like a human element, and which is why thankfully I think robots will probably never take over our business, thankfully, because there's a huge human element and a connect, right? Like sometimes you may say something funny if they're just having a bad time or they're really stressed or something. You say something and you make them laugh, or you just have to think on your feet. And and I think sometimes you just have to let them be the way they are, and everyone is beautiful. Everyone has a beautiful moment. You don't just have to get the most stunning bride or the most handsome groom. Everyone is beautiful when they're natural, when they're candid. Yes. You can get an amazing moment. So I think that's what I look for.
I think it did make a lot of sense there, having a comfortable rapport with your client, especially the bride, because you're going to be shadowing them throughout, makes a huge amount of difference. And I can say it because I've had that on my own wedding, and I realized how important it was to really have a photographer friend and someone, of course, who's the team, so you can possibly just sort of be extremely honest about what you're feeling and how you want certain things to be taken or removed, or if there's someone annoying you also in front of you, can actually just tell the photographer, can you please make sure this person does not come close to me again? And people in your entire wedding. So that really, I completely agree with you. And I think the brides and our listeners will really take note of that. And if one thing they should really be working on as a photographer should be the relationship with the client, versus just doing a job and coming back victorious with pictures, which is not conveying that sort of a message. So, I wanted to, because of course you've had a journey, which is television for over 10 years. I know you've also taken your, next career phase, which is the photography phase in weddings, quite seriously. You went for a diploma. So were there any challenges you faced when you first entered this wedding industry? I mean, of course, we are all very close-knit. There's a community that's driving this entire fraternity in India. So did you have a challenge? Did you face any challenges, extreme challenges, or instances that you can remember of when you first tried to get into this industry?
Quite honestly, I think
Or was it very organically?
It was kind of organic. So I'll tell you, I knew Aditya Motwani through a friend, and I actually ended up getting my first full wedding in India, I think, through him. Because I went and because I knew someone who was getting married, and they said, okay, we have, and I just come back from Paris, and they said we've already, they had like paid a bomb to some well-known photographer, and they said, but we really like the way you shoot. So would you just come and do the peras? Because also what happened was, while I was in Paris, I ended up shooting 3 weddings as like the junior most third photographer. Okay, let's say. Yeah. So where they weren't counting on my pictures like to make the main this thing, but I ended up getting some pretty decent shots, I guess. Yeah. And so when I came back and I met Adi and stuff like that, so then I pretty much ended up getting my first full wedding through him. Wow. And I was fortunate enough because honestly, I had like everyone from Karan Johar downwards at that wedding. Okay. So when people there was everyone at that wedding. There was Arjun Rampa, there was Karan Johar, there was like Sohail Khan. I mean, a whole bunch of like Bollywood.
Imagine a first project like that. I mean, you'd be nervous as hell,
Oh my God, I didn't sleep. So this is a joke. Till today, before the peras, I don't sleep. Like I think my brides probably like get more sleep than I do. It's a joke. I'll sleep before, because the peras is it, right? Like a sangeet, the mehndi, this, that. It's gotten a little better now. Earlier, I think I used to sleep like 1 hour. Now maybe I sleep like 3 hours or something. Yeah. So it's gotten a bit better now. But and I think it was, I think somewhere it sort of set the ball rolling also. Because besides weddings, I've also shot people like Kalki. I've shot with Richa Chadda. I've shot with Dia Mirza, who's an old friend from 110 days. So I think what also happened is brides would go through your Instagram, obviously, and when they see that stuff, they're like, oh, okay, if she shot these celebrities, she must be good. And then there's a certain comfort factor, like I said, and all of that, because you're a woman.
So,
So honestly, it's
yeah,
not been super tough.
that's a good point you've raised, and I want to understand a lot more here. That you storytelling about of photographers is not just for clicking good pictures now. It's also about how it's showcased online, so that you get your next project. And if you feel that your previous work, which is not wedding related, also gets you those leads. I mean, do you think? I mean, how strongly do you feel about social media in that front? If I may ask.
See, honestly, Ginny, I think in my line of work, I think it's super important because it's so visual, right? What I do. I mean, it becomes very tough when you have an NDA and people say you can't show the work, and I'm like, nahi, yaar, please, aise mat karo. Like, showing my work is what I do.
Yes.
It's like, how do you tell someone I don't have pictures or I can't show you pictures? Though I think, like, that's what we've ended up doing a couple of NDA weddings, and I think people sort of, because they look at the rest of the work you've done, they trust that you're not lying.
Yeah.
And then one or two of those people who have the NDA with you will say, okay, fine, if you're like, you can't forward, but if you just want to show it on your phone or your laptop, a couple of pictures is fine. It shouldn't come back to me that you showed the whole trailer or you showed them like my entire, slideshow or something like that. And that's happened with us like a couple of times, where the brides have actually said, because I'm like, come on now, you're so pretty and we had such beautiful photos, please. And of course, this is later once the delivery is done and they're happy and all of that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think having said that, like in my line of work, honestly, I don't think I know of, I could be wrong, I don't know of any photographer who's not on Instagram internationally or
sense to be online, because now, even in these times that we are at, when the wedding season is off, people are pivoting to different businesses. I mean, you've got to say a social media relevant in these times. And
yeah.
Coming to, I mean, of course, it doesn't define the kind of success you have. Like you said, there are NDAs where you can't put out your work completely, and you can't possibly talk about every wedding that you've done. But of course, there are certain takeaways for every client from a photographer like Riva, who sort of gives you a package which is different from the others. Because now, if you see in the market, the competition is fierce. I mean, there are so many photographers, there are so many videographers. It's like, I think the photography and the makeup industry, both of those industries are always flooding with new artists.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you also, just for our listeners here, that what are the items you reckon one should be really including in the packages to sort of stand out from their competitive pitch, or to have the competitive pitch and to stand out from the pack? What do you reckon is the best takeaway in the package from a photographer's point of view for the client?
I don't know. A lot of people do something like a quick teaser. I think clients like that because they're fresh off the wedding. I do it for certain clients who ask for it. I don't always do it for everyone because sometimes budgets allow, sometimes they don't, and things like that. Some people say no, just like take your time and work at it. So it's honestly, it's very different. I definitely throw in a slideshow of pictures. I mean, of course, you have your trailer that we all know, which is like whatever your 3 to 5 minutes, whatever it is, depending on the size of the wedding and the moments you got. But I also throw in a slideshow, which is literally like how a trailer is the best moments of the wedding. It's a slideshow, which is basically your photographs. So you send them that as their first look, because again, whatever you're delivering, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 photographs, they're not going to be able to send it to everyone. Even if you send it on some kind of an online portal, no one has the bandwidth. I mean, think about it, Giri. If you didn't get to attend someone's wedding, or you did get to attend someone's wedding, unless you're super close to them, you don't have the patience. And all you want to see is like just the basic key highlight moments, of that wedding. So what I do is I give them a slideshow before, everything goes out to them. So that at least they have that to sort of hold on to for a bit.
Yeah.
So I think that helps because that's also a quick link that they can just send to everyone, and you probably have maybe 150 to max 200 photos on it. Yeah. Again, depending on the size of the wedding and the, sorry, did that disturb?
No, it's all good.
Right. So yeah. So I think.
So what you're saying is basically essentially work towards just your regular films and set of pictures and throw in a teaser when you need to. Do you reckon
Yes, and
invite stuff can also be taken up by the photographers because you guys already have an editing team? Because now there
so
are
what
files that are video invites that are going out, right? So can a photographer really offer that as well, you reckon?
Yeah, so what we've done a lot of the times is honestly when I do the pre-wedding, I understand that a lot of people like, if your dad's a big businessman or he's like some big shot CEO or whatever. I understand that, in certain lines of work, there have to be those formal hard copy invites. But sometimes just for like the younger lot and the family and the friends and things like that, it's nice to have a little fun video. So what I do is I throw in, either their pre-wedding shoot, then we just put in some supers and stuff which has like okay, see you in 10 days or see you in 2 weeks, if it's a destination wedding or something like that. And I try and make a little story out of it. Like this one couple, we did their pre-wedding in Phuket. This was just pre-corona. So the wedding was supposed to happen in Phuket. And then literally, you won't believe it, 10 days before, this was an end Feb wedding. 10 days before the wedding, they moved it to Goa because they said there's no way we're waiting. Everyone's ready. So we're going to do this. So then I was like, oh, okay, chalo, at least the common elements are the beach and the sand and all of that. So it worked because in Phuket, we actually had this beautiful setup at the W at the property. Not at the W, sorry, at the JW. And I just incorporated everything that we shot for their pre-wedding into this. Yeah. And in the end, just said, see you in Goa, in 10 days.
That's a great addition.
So that worked.
Takeaway, right? I mean, it's a great addition to your portfolio you can offer to a client to close in a wedding because I don't know of any photographer doing this because people might sort of clock in a photographer for the main wedding function and have someone else for the pre-wedding. So this will be a great way for a photographer to sort of close on a wedding by offering them something different than just the pictures from the pre-wedding shoot.
Yeah, and honestly, it's like you said, you have your editing team, you have a little bit of creativity in you. It's not such a big effort or not such an additional cost to do something like that to your clients. I think these little things go a long way, Yeah. It doesn't cost you much. Yeah. And it worked for them because, their whole thing had changed. I doubt they had time to make invites. Like, obviously imagine making hotel bookings for like 300 people, travel reservations for all your vendors and all of that, cancelling, rebooking, all of that crap. Right. So it worked well. I told them, I said, okay, fine, this is what we're doing. I said, I'll send this to you so you can send it out to people, so there's 100%. So then that acts as an informal invite, right? And anyway, then in those times, it totally worked. So we were like, oh my God, this is so cool. We loved the way you did it. So yeah, that was nice.
Super. And Riva, I mean, you're part of a fraternity that's really close knit. I mean, when there are forums or there are these award functions, all of us get to meet and you literally see familiar faces. So I mean, and I think at every level and at every event, we hear about collaborations, get together, make this big together and, try and work and streamline your business by effectively getting different teams together to deliver a bigger product. We constantly hear this.
Yeah.
Where do you think this Indian photography fraternity really stands when it comes to all of this? What are their mindsets like? And, where do they see this going? I mean, what are their thought processes around this?
So honestly, Ginny, pre-corona, I mean, we've ended up doing, when I say collaborations, like I said, we've shot with the wedding filmer. They've done video, we've done the pictures and stuff like that. And then sometimes you have like a different traditional team or sometimes you have a separate team from the boys' side, those kind of things happen, right? Because they're like, acha, hamare side ke, ye side ke. So I don't generally get that. I tell the client, I'm like, listen, you know what? I can get you the team size you want. It's not a big deal. I would recommend just stick with the same team because then no one's in competition trying to outdo the other.
Yes.
And sometimes even when we do end up shooting in a situation like that, I usually, to break the ice, I would just go up to them, introduce myself so that there's no, because I hate to say it, when you're all on the same ground and this is not something, we don't need to work together because if you're photographing the boys' side and I'm doing the girls' side, we don't really need to work together. Everyone just does their own job. But then there shouldn't be a situation where you're getting in my frame, ruining my shot, and I don't want to be in your frame and ruin your shot either. So then we say, okay, listen, let's try and do this. Let's just say that, these are like let's set certain parameters and we'll sort of try and stick with this. Let's not ruin their day in our competitiveness and things like that. So I don't think it can't be done. It definitely can. Having said that, honestly, teams are getting smaller and smaller now because inquiries that I have got, like we had a couple of weddings that were meant to happen in June, July that have now been pushed. So honestly, I haven't ended up shooting a wedding during these days. But, I don't know if collaboration will really be possible because everyone's just asking, if you're only allowed 50 people, no one even wants more than like 2 or max 3 people, like including video and everything.
Fair enough.
You
Yeah.
know, so
But
I don't really, I mean, I'm going to have people on my team who are going to be not doing anything. So
do you reckon
I don't know how a collaboration.
post-corona, like, once we are all back in the normal times, and you reckon that, photography could sort of work better if the fraternity sort of comes together and collaborates further? Because
Definitely. I mean, honestly, I
planners
don't
collaborate on regular basis. Makeup artists collaborate on regular basis. So how does a photography team really look? Because I know the big names. I mean, you can of course have a lot of team size building. I mean, you can have more videographers and photographers coming from traditional angles and stuff. But I'm talking about two brands coming together to deliver a good product.
Why not? And I'll tell you honestly, like, so when there are brides who say, oh, but like my in-laws side, they've already fixed so and so or this or that, and they're like, is that okay? And I'm like, look, I think the most important is to be secure about your work. Know that you're a professional and, do your job professionally.
Yeah.
Most importantly, be secure. And you don't need to, you can totally collaborate. Like, I know when we've done a couple of collaborations, we've actually like, I've said, listen, let's try our best to keep out of each other's frame. And having said that, sometimes people do get a bit this thing. I just try and laugh it off and like try and take it as a compliment that, okay, fine, if I found an angle and this person's trying to copy my angle, then that's a compliment because, they couldn't think of something creative themselves. Maybe it's not the kindest thing to say, but yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not that it can't be done. We just have to change our mindsets. Yeah. Also, I think what happens with planners is you'll are very specifically told that, okay, you need to handle X, Y, Z and you need to handle X. So I think with a planner, there are demarcations. Now, what do you tell a photographer? कि आप फेरे के time पे मत लो, आप सिंदूर के time पे लो, आप मंगलसूत्र. It doesn't work like that, right? So I think there are no set boundaries. Hence, sometimes people can tread on each other's toes, but I don't see why if you're professional and secure enough and know your work.
Yeah.
And know what you have to deliver. Like I said, the most important thing is you can't screw your client over. It's their big day. It's never coming back. You'll get into whatever one little squabble or some nonsense of, insecurity, but their moment is never coming back.
So, I mean, I totally agree with this. I think collaborations are the way forward. No corona or corona times, I think collaborations have really worked in favor for a lot of industries. So why not for the wedding photography fraternity as well? Yeah. Something you feel you would want to tell, or something that you feel how wedding planners could really build successful relationships with their photographers. Because I always see this happening every time there's a pitch happening from a wedding planner or from a photographer's point of view. I see most of the time it's wonderfully, collaborative, wonderfully understood. Like planners work with a set of photographers and the photographers work with a set of planners. But there could be one thing that you feel wedding planners could really do to build a strong relationship with photographers. Anything that you can think of? How can a wedding planner really work towards a successful relationship with a wedding photographer?
Wedding photographer. Yeah. I don't really know if there's any sort of set formula. I, for one, touch wood, I've always had a very good relationship with like any of the planners I've shot with. Sometimes I think it just so happens that you end up getting picked before the planner's picked. I think that happens sometimes when they're very sure whom they want. I think makeup artist, photographer, and venue are sort of priority. And sometimes even makeup artist and photographer over like the venue, if they're not like too fussy and things like that. So I think sometimes that may become an issue or something. But I think, we're all peas. How do I say? Every drop makes an ocean. And I keep saying this, like, I tell the makeup artist, normally we always have like a bit of a thing with the makeup artist on the day of the wedding because I'm like, I will very politely tell my bride that tell your makeup artist, So ideally, I tell them, okay, I want 45 minutes because I know I'm going to end up with 15 or 10 if I'm lucky. So at least if I say that, and the thing is, it's her big day, so I can't tell the makeup artist, listen, hurry up, you know, because her peras aren't going to wait. I'll end up with like 5 minutes to do pictures that I need that are going to be important, because she's not going to remember at the end of the day कि हाँ मेरे makeup artist ने आधा घंटा extra लगाया था. She's just going to remember that, you know, I didn't get these shots. And like I said, even if she doesn't have a problem, there'll be some chachi, nani, dadi, some auntie who will say, "Ke beta," you know. So I think everyone, most importantly, needs to work in tandem. I don't really know if there are any issues between wedding planners and wedding photographers. I'm not aware. I'm not trying to be politically correct at all.
People, I think you sort of come in contact with it also when it comes to fighting with time with the bride and groom. Makeup artists probably are the people that you sort of have to coordinate between a lot more than a wedding planner, because once you're at the job, you're actually at the job, and the wedding planner is
because the planners are busy doing what they have to do now, making sure the mandap is ready, bridal entry, groom ka barat entry, all that
coordinating.
So you know,
yes,
yeah. So I think that is like, you know, I generally everyone is sweet, everyone's there just to do a job, you know. And then sometimes I'm like, listen, because if we start getting late, I don't want to hassle the bride, so I can't tell you to like hurry up, so please, you know. So I just very sweetly, because you generally bump into them at some point or the other, so I just tell them. And then I think when you've been around for a while, people know. So I'm like, you know, and then you just make like minor adjustments and then you work around that, because at the end of the day, I can't turn around and tell my bride that, dude, you gave me like 3 minutes. I can't do that, right?
No, absolutely. And also one thing, I mean, it also brings me to the last section of my discussion with you to understand, like, you know, what really separates the great photographers from the rest of the pack? What are your takes on it? Of course, you talked about being secure with your work, but what is that one thing that you think separates a great photographer from the pack?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Did that like...
No, that's fine.
Got to call that kid. Okay, so like I said, most importantly, be secure in your own work. Never pull another fellow photographer, new, old, more experienced, super senior, super successful, not so successful down. Never do that. I've seen that happening sometimes where they say, oh, so and so, this, that, and I'm like, dude, don't do that. It doesn't look good on you. You know, and how do you know someone's not doing that to you, right? I think be true to your work. There's no harm getting inspired, but don't blatantly plagiarize. That's just not nice.
No.
You know, sometimes there are people you literally, like, I was taught this. I mean, I've done, you know, even after I've become a wedding photographer, there's some fabulous international photographers who do some brilliant work. I've done workshops with them, and they always say, they're like, listen, if you're going to get inspired by someone's work and copy a certain setup that they did or something like that, please at least give them due credit. Yeah. You know, like how sometimes you post a quote, you give credit on Instagram, don't you? Like curtsy so and so, or like a something like, I don't know, it's a Rumi quote or an Atticus quote, or like Mark Twain said this. So why don't you give the devil their due? You know, I think it's all, and come on, I say this all the time. You may have a couple at the exact same venue, but everyone's story is different. So the moments are going to be entirely different. I mean, I once had like a groom's dad, and we had just landed and literally gone to their house. And he was like, oh, how are you going to shoot this wedding? And I'm like, I almost wanted to tell him, like, sir, I don't really know, because in the sense that there's no script, you know, we showed candid. So, of course, I gave him some spiel about, oh, we'll do this and that, which was not really spiel, because it is part of how we sort of operate, you know, getting to know the bride and groom and getting them comfortable and things like that, which I think is like the easy part most of the time. But yeah, it was a bit intimidating, because I'm like, there's no script. I mean, of course, I know I have to get X many shots, you know, for my edit and things like that. But it's pretty much just what their story is going to be, you know, like how it unfolds, how they are. I don't like to tell my bride, oh, can you do this, or oh, can you do that, and get them all conscious as far as possible. Unless they're doing, like, for example, if there's beautiful window light here and my bride is completely in the dark, I'll just be like, you know what, sweetie, you're putting your earrings on. Why don't you come do it at the window? I have great light. So I'm not stopping her from doing what she's doing.
Your idea, staying, you know, staying creative, keeping that passion alive, and of course, saying no to plagiarism completely, and outrightly not even supporting this if any other photographer is doing it, and sort of having your own individuality come across from your photos is how you sort of differentiate yourselves. Super. I think that really gave us a great insight on how this industry should really work, Riva. And last but not the least, a podcast is always interesting when you have a little rapid fire. And
Oh, okay.
very simple one. It's nothing more serious. Trust me. It's as easy as the conversation we recently had. Uh, I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and you have exactly 5 seconds to answer them.
Okay. Chalo, I'm ready.
Brace yourself. Here goes.
Yeah.
Your favorite wedding destination?
Oh God, Paris.
You took the longest time for that one.
Because there's so many, but then I'm like, no, Paris.
Your current lockdown obsession?
Cooking, baking.
Cooking and baking time. Passion or skill? What do you need the most to survive this industry?
Passion.
My next question, I think you've answered in the previous one, the main characteristic. That was my last question any which way, so I'll skip that. One skill you wish you had?
Oh God. I wish I could ride a bike. I mean, I cycle, but somehow I've never gotten myself on like a...
Any skill you reckon from, like, because you shoot and you don't, do you edit as well?
Yeah, I do. I've done a course in filmmaking as well in London, so I edit as well. Yeah. So no.
You have the skills basically.
Yeah.
Your favorite wedding photographer, Indian?
Sam and Ekta. I think they do a brilliant job. House on Clouds.
Yes.
Do some brilliant work.
Your favorite international wedding photographer?
Oh God, so many. There's Two-Man, Susana Barbera, Victor Lax, who's Spanish, who does some amazing work. You're just like, you look at his work and then you think, "Hi, yaar, main kya kar rahi hu? Sab kuch page patch ke udhar na chali jao ya do paru," one of the two. Yeah, they do some brilliant work.
And one thing that you feel the Indian wedding photography industry had, and it doesn't.
Had and it doesn't. Oh God, I really wish we were more secure. Seriously, I really wish we were a little more secure in basically just have faith, have a little faith in your skill.
Yeah.
And obviously there are times each one of us has lost out on like a dream project.
Right.
And that's okay, like maybe you just need to up your game or something, and that's fine. But I really wish we were a little more secure. I mean, like I have friends in the industry and it's great, and we help each other and stuff like that. You give a little advice or some tip if you shot there, they need some help and whatever stuff like that, which is great. But yeah, I just wish we could all just be a little more secure and have some more faith in ourselves.
Great. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much, Riva. This was,
thank you.
I think, an eye-opener as well, because I've interviewed a lot of people in the past, and I think you come across as someone who's seen it all and is ready to conquer the world with the positivity. Being positive.
I hope so.
You have a lot of faith in the industry and you in yourself as well, and I think that you bring it across when you're having the conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you for making the time. We've had it took us a while to get here, but I'm glad we made it finally. It was us with a lot of food for thought, because I feel I always saw this industry as something which was very competitive, and it still is. But you've given me a little positive note on the fact that people can have more little faith and collaborate and sort of conquer together than actually work in competition with each other. So thank you so very much.
Absolutely.
For your
thank you, Gini. It was an absolute pleasure. It's always lovely talking to you as always. Yes. I just wish it wasn't like in these circumstances, but hopefully we'll meet again soon once on the other side of this madness, as I say.
Absolutely, and thank you for being absolutely honest and speaking straight from your heart. And I think this was what Voice stands for. So really, really happy to have you with me today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.